So, yeah, I'll get my timer ready. Okay, I think we're good to go. So for 30S students, you can follow the videos on my website. And for you 40S students, I'm now recording this video to start our tutorial for this final section. If you're watching this now over Teams and you're following along, great. If you're watching this later, this video will be on our website along with the other ones. And it's one option for this tutorial, okay? If we go on my class website, sharing my screen, putting a couple things on, putting a timer on. So if you scroll down now to remote learning assignments, here's that tutorial. So like I said, you don't have to follow what I'm doing right now over Teams in these 20-minute chunks. You could just read this document, which gives a set of instructions on how to follow this tutorial from start to finish. And as it outlines in the instructions, this tutorial was designed to be done in about 1 hour of time. 1 hour, okay? In one sitting, theoretically. I can prove that because I've already last semester recorded a video of me going through the tutorial from start to finish. And actually, if you look at that video now, if you actually go in and look at the video, it doesn't even take an hour. It actually was done in 40 minutes. Now, I did kind of rush through it a little bit, but from start to finish, you can see me go through the tutorial, and here's me on video, going through it from start to finish. Now, just to give you a heads up as to what you're going to be creating, it's not a game, okay? It's a database. It's a database, though, to make it interesting, it's a meme database. So of internet memes, for example. Essentially, a database of graphics. So with this thing, it'll allow you to enter images, whether you save them or whether you actually just find them on the internet and copy and paste the link to the image. You save an image, and then you save some keywords for that image, so to help you find it later, like words about it. So you can maybe see, as I was doing the this one here, I was typing in keywords like Trump and hair, stuff like that. And so then you can update the database by sorting it and searching it and saving it and all the interesting things that would come with some of the extras content of this collections unit and some of the other stuff. So that's kind of the end product, is what it's going to be. No, you are absolutely not going to type in all this code. As a matter of fact, you're going to start this tutorial by downloading it. Okay, it's already partially done. So you're going to download the project and then work on finishing the project from the point where it's at. So that's something to consider, right? That you could be following this video, following the instructions or a previous video of it, okay? There's also a third link, which is going to be useful. That's a link to just the code. So the code is also in this document, the instructions document, but sometimes as you go further into that document, so if we go further ahead, it might be actually kind of tough to read here and here. It's small. So what you can do is you can also open just the code. And that's much simpler. It doesn't have all the instructions with it, like this one does. Like, you see all these instructions over on this side. It has just the code, so it's much easier to read. And not just read, you can actually copy and paste the code right out of that PDF document, right off my website. So that's what I mean by you're not going to be typing this entire thing in. You're going to be downloading it. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. And you can either follow the document or watch the video, or watch me do it live over Teams as I'm doing right now. And just off to the side, I've got a little timer running so I can see that I'm only going to go for 20 minutes, about 20 minutes. If the timer goes off and I'm in the middle of something, I'm going to finish it, okay? This tutorial was made in lieu or in place of the last unit called collections and I mean, this is Computer Science 40S, so I'm trying to jump ahead to show you guys some extra content that you could encounter in computer science moving forward into, say, first year computer science at a university or a first year programming course at Red River College. So in addition to the concept of collections, it touches on stuff like saving and opening files, sorting and searching code. That's kind of content that you would see if you were in a first year or even a second year course. So I want to give you a little sample of that in this tutorial, okay? Now I wanted to, for my first thought when I made this tutorial was to make it into something cool like a video game, because those are really fun to make. But it didn't really fit with the content as much as I would have liked it. I would have kind of forced it into it. So instead it's this database, but to make it fun, I made it a database of memes, okay? As it says here, you can complete this in one sitting if you wanted to. I've proven that because the video shows it can be done in 40 minutes or across several sessions, which is essentially what I'm doing right now with you guys. Okay, so now it's time to begin this tutorial. And as I'm recording this video, I will be linking it up to our website later. But let's start with how it begins. So it says you go to this website to start. And yes, this is actually a link. So I'm going to click that link, okay, which opens a GitHub page. Then the instruction says you're going to click that green code button and you're going to download it as a zip file. So let's do that. Code, download zip. So you can see here it's downloading to my computer right now. Then it says, once it's downloaded, unzip it and move the folder to your hard drive. So I'm going to do that next. I'm going to unzip it. And I'm going to move this tutorial to my hard drive. In this case, I'm just going to put it right on my desktop. Then the instruction says, project from NetBeans. So go to File, Open Project. So let's do that. File, Open Project. Go to my desktop. And there is that tutorial. It has a weird name. I realize that. Tutorials Create. If you don't want to have it have that weird name, if that's something you'd prefer not to, that's okay. You can open the project and then rename it. You can actually rename it right in NetBeans. This is not necessary. You don't need to do that. But if you'd like to do that, here's how you're going to do it. So once it opens, it's going to be opened as just tutorials. Yeah, that's what it is. And inside this, yeah, that's right. Sorry, took me a second to grasp what was going on there. What you're actually going to find is this tutorial project has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 packages. So you might remember packages is something we've been working on since the beginning of the 40S course. It's a way to organize your code. In our example, we had lots of packages and we even had packages inside of packages. So this tutorial project has 5 packages. It also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 classes. 10 classes inside of 5 packages. 5 packages, 10 classes. However, they are incomplete. They're there, they have code in them, but you can see, for example, these 2 right here have such incomplete code that they're actually generating an error right now. So the error will get fixed as we go through the tutorial, but expect this tutorial to have errors throughout until near the end when you can finally run it. You can't really run the tutorial until the end, so to speak. So it is doing the tutorial that will end up fixing the errors of these various things. So that's how you can get started. Now, if you want to rename this thing, if you don't want to call it tutorials, just right click, go to rename, right click on the main project or the coffee cup, right-click on the coffee cup itself, and then go down to rename. When you rename it, so I might call mine Computer Science 40S Tutorial. I'm also going to check off this. So it also renames the folder that's sitting on my desktop right now. So it's going to rename the folder and it's going to rename the project. That is not necessary. You do not need to do that. Okay? But now it's renamed. Still got the 5 packages. It's still got the 10 classes. But now it's renamed from tutorials to just Computer Science 40S Tutorial. And sitting on my desktop right now, it's renamed the folder as well. Okay? So those are things you can do just to get started with this. And yes, this is what it outlines here as well in the instructions, that you'd have all this stuff. Then it says you're going to start by opening this file first, CS40S tutorial, and it shows it over here. Let's do that. Let's do that next. CS40S tutorial, and there it is. Okay. So in these files, you're going to get a lot of comments that are also available in the instructions. So you can see right here, it shows you exactly where you could have downloaded it and how to download it. Okay. It says that this class is already coded and completed. You do not need to do anything other than, it says right here, changing the author name to your name. So down here under author, right now it says me. And the other thing to change is the date. Okay. So I'm going to call this tutorial guy. And my date, it is now June 2nd, 2021. So those are 2 things that you're going to want to change in the comments. And it says that right here. So I've tried to provide lots of different ways to help you to get through this tutorial. In the instructions document, in the video, in the comments themselves, it's lots for you to read. It says, please look through the code, read the comments. This is probably one of the things that most students ignore about this tutorial, but this is where the learning comes from, right? It's essentially learning what this tutorial is doing, okay? And because next thing we're going to do is open a different file. So let's just read through. This project was created in Loo. Okay, I already knew that. It's going to create a view for the user interface. All right, so let's now hit save. The tutorial's underway. And let's now open up this thing called UI View. You'll notice something about UI View, that the icon it uses right here is a little different than all the other Java icons. Notice how they look? These ones have errors. Why is this one a little different? Well, you'll see when you open it immediately, this is one of those files that I use the designer for. So it's using the designer to build the meme database design. So it's already done for you. That's good. If you were listening to me going through the talking to the 30th students, they have to build their design. But I feel for you 40th students, you've already experienced this. You've already done a design, whether it was in the 30th course, whether it was in the 20th course in Visual Studio. You know how to do this thing with a palette and a properties window. You know how to build this. So we're going to go right to the source code of this design. You might remember that's how you do it. If you forgot how to do that, up here under UI View, there's 2 buttons for source and design where you can switch between them. A little different than Visual Studio where it opened different tabs. Okay. But that's what it says right here as well. That once you're in UI View, you click on source right here. Okay. It also explains how the design is already completed. You do not need to modify it. Okay. You can, if you wish, make a few little changes, but you are responsible for adding a comment called explanation. Okay. This comment explanation needs to be put into right here where it says add comment here. So you could literally type that comment right from here if you wanted to. You could literally just type it in. Or if you don't want to type it, this is what I mean by it's not necessarily a typing exercise. Here's how you can copy paste it. So you could try copying and pasting it right off the instructions, but that doesn't really work. So here's where that PDF of the code comes in handy. Because now I can scroll down to, okay, I'm on the UI view. Here's that explanation. And now I can actually literally copy and paste the comment from there over to there. Okay, that's how easy it is. Now, it does want to copy paste. It does tend to not necessarily get it exactly right. Might have a space or two there. To me, that's not a big deal. That's nothing I would need you to worry about. But if you're a stickler for details, you may want to sort of go in and put in extra spaces like that. That's an option. Or I'm actually going to give you another option. I'm going to undo back. So I go and paste this comment in. It's not quite perfect. One thing you could try, and it may not work here with comments, but it'll definitely work when we get to the coding, is something I would remind you that you learned back in the grade 11 course. And you might remember this was a little keyboard shortcut. And if you forgot the keyboard shortcuts in NetBeans, here's a quick way to do it. Help keyboard shortcuts card. And I'll give it a second to open that. Move that over. So you might remember it opens this PDF of all the keyboard shortcuts that are available in NetBeans. It's a 2-page document. And one of them, this one right here, is the one that's really going to be handy with this tutorial. To format your code, to clean it up, to essentially make it look nice. Alt-Shift-F. Watch what I'm going to try right now. I'm going to select this code. It's important to select it first, because if you just click Alt-Shift-F, it tries to format all of your code, and that might end up causing you more problems at this point. So I'm just going to select the code I want to format, Alt-Shift-F, and it auto cleaned it up. It didn't add this one extra space there, but it does a great job of cleaning your code really quickly. So this is what I mean by this tutorial is not going to be a giant typing exercise for you. In a lot of ways, it's going to be a giant copy-paste formatting exercise for you. But what's important with this tutorial is to essentially read what it's saying here, okay? And that's what I'm going to read to you right now. You're using this NetBeans designer. It's like the Visual Studio ability to use what's called WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, a visual designer to build a user interface or a UI, okay? Now, in computer science, there's a whole study on user interface and user experience, or UX, that I would love to get into the details of it with you, but we don't have that time. So it's what's called a design paradigm. And one of those paradigms, just one of them, there's many of them, is called the MVC model. Stands for Model View Controller. This is something that you would study in a 3rd or 4th year computer science degree. The idea is to separate what the user sees and what the user interacts with what is doing the logic behind the scenes, or sometimes that's called the engine. For those of you who are gamers, you might think of things like the term game engine and stuff like that, okay? So how that is done is to kind of use your code to put sort of the design in one place and the logic in another place to keep it a little more organized. So I'm going to do a miniature version of this with this example, okay? And that's what this is saying here. So this thing here is just the design, and it's essentially all done now. So here you can see, I would recommend you read what it says here. This is what's going to control this view. We're going to be adding code to this controller class, okay? This is the constructor that builds the meme database. It was written by the designer. NetBeans writes a method called initComponents, which does all the design for you. This method is usually hidden inside of NetBeans. And as we're in the last minute of this tutorial, just going to go through a few more of these, that then we're going to build this controller class using a constructor and send it like our label and our text field and our lists. Okay, the controller is instantiated and essentially linked to this thing that views it. So there's a connection between the controller and the view. And then the various buttons just run lines of code within the controller. So you'll notice there's really no logic in this Java class. When I click a button like this, it just sends the logic over to the controller and says, clear out the fields. Okay, here you see my timer ticking down. So that's what I would do, is I would recommend you read this stuff. And now you can see how we're going to get started on this meme database. Okay, that was my alarm. That's the 20-minute alarm, like I said. So at this point, I'm going to turn off the recording.